Ordinance. Consider approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 20 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Nuisances, especially Section 2010 entitled Keeping of the Bees.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Commission members. Just a little bit of background. This was brought to staff's attention by at least one commissioner, maybe two, and then one or two citizens that had some nuisance issues with people that were keeping bees inside the city limits. What staff did is we looked at other cities that have adopted bee nuisance ordinances, and we took a very relaxed approach to what some other cities had adopted. I know there was a request to table this item. Staff has no preference either way, really. I mean, I want to make sure this was just brought to us by commissioners. So if there's somebody that wants to jump in and have any say, I'm open to any questions or anything like that.
I want to jump in. My husband and I kept bees at 313 South Washington for 20 years. I live at 500 Henley Perry and have a yard that is mostly garden. I have a compost pile that 3 weeks ago was brown with bees because I had dumped overripe pears into it. I have a koi pond with a flat rock so that the bees can drink there. Bees don't care where they drink water. They fly 200 to 400 miles looking for food. At this moment, because of the drought of the summer, they're starving. One of our beekeepers was called to a daycare center, sure that they had a feral swarm of bees. They didn't. The bees were drinking the juice out of the juice boxes that were dumped in the trash. At 313 South Washington, they had to cut down a water oak which had 14 feet of bees in its hollow trunk. We could not live without bees. We could not eat without bees. And if you think that you can tell a bee to stay home and off of a fence, you haven't met a bee lately. This is when I have been inundated, probably because people knew that Greg and I did keep bees, by beekeepers that are just astounded that anybody would think that you could restrict them to water within 10 feet of their hive or behind a fence or within 100 feet of whatever. It just can't be done. And in the meantime, bees are so protected that if you kill one, you violate the law. So not only can we table it, I would like to see it go away forever.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
It is a motion.
I second it.
Mr. Morrison, I'm not one of those commissioners that ask you to put this on, but I do agree, simply because of experience. Not this summer, I did have a few bees, but last summer, it was a problem. I couldn't get up to my door. Bees were swarming everywhere. I didn't know that bees could build holes. I didn't know that, excuse me for my ignorance on that, but I didn't. But I have 2 holes on each side of my porch, under my fan, where they dug holes in there, and I have to seal it. And I have company coming into my house fighting bees. So where are all these bees coming from? Well, it wasn't as bad this year. So I just need to understand what this ordinance that you have proposed to us will do for bees, and then I'll make my decision if I want to vote for this as one commissioner.
If I can, let me go through I think there's 4 different items that staff proposed in this. And I want to be very clear, this is just what we propose based on what other cities are doing. There's more restrictive out there. There's not very much less restrictive, to be honest with you. But what it says is that if you do keep hives, you have to keep them 150 feet away from any inhabited dwelling, other than the beekeepers. If you can't have more than 3 hives on a tract that is less than an acre. You just have to provide adequate water service within 20 feet. We understand we can't regulate where bees go to drink water, but you've got to provide within 20 feet a water service for bees. And then that we don't want to allow any Africanized honeybees.
Neither do the beekeepers.
I understand. Please don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just trying to create an ordinance that I was asked to create.
No, I
So-
understand that. I'm just, you didn't create the ordinance, Mr. Morrison. I'm just, as a beekeeper, as a gardener, as a person with a vegetable garden in a bee farm, I just find this ordinance impossible to enforce. And well, we have an ordinance passed in 1927 that says your chickens can't run in your front yard. We don't enforce that one either, thank goodness. This ordinance would be, that one I found looking for something else, but this is that kind of an ordinance, and we just don't need it. It's just not going to, Commissioner Calhoun's problem with her bees is not going to be met with this ordinance. Her bees are feral. They came out of her house.
I don't have bees in my house.
You said you had them above your...
I sit on the outside
Right,
on my
but-
porch, and not in my house.
No, but I'm saying...
But they
that-
do come into my cooling
But they didn't come
system.
out of a hive.
Excuse me, Mr. Morrison, do you know where these bees are located inside the city?
No,
Do you?
no, ma'am. I
So
mean,
we have no way of finding out where they're located in our city?
as far as the beehives, the
Yeah,
beekeepers,
the beekeepers. And
yeah, I don't have I mean, we may be able to work with the local bee organization to determine if there's a registration process, but the city does not have a registration process for beekeepers.
And she just said earlier, there's like 100.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Right.
Well, and I imagine Commissioner Calhoun's bees are feral. In other words, they don't live in a hive. They live in a tree, or they live somewhere maybe in your siding. But they don't live in a hive, or they wouldn't be massed
On my
on the
porch.
They would go in and out of their hive otherwise.
And as you stated, passing this ordinance will do nothing for those bees, for Commissioner Calhoun.
But it might do a
Well,
lot
where
for
are
the
the
way we
bees coming
eat.
from? I mean, I used to didn't have problems
Well,
with
they-
bees.
you can't say that they're coming from the beekeeper's hive.
No.
We're just saying bees are out there. They could be coming from anywhere.
Well,
And they're necessary for food production.
well, it's like that 14 feet.
And I can understand that, but it's just that I'd like to know if there are beekeepers around my community. If so, then they need to move somewhere else, because I don't want my neighbors and myself getting bit. So if this commission want to table it or whatever, then I will, the majority rule, but I do have a concern for those bees.
But they didn't come from a hive. They came from that
care where they
14-foot
came
tree in my yard. That beekeepers, Greg used to get calls daily from people that found a hive of bees that had swarmed under a porch, under a car, in a daycare center. We had one where we had to go get the fire truck to get it out of the steeple of the Head Start Center. All of them feral bees that found a new place to live, that wasn't in a hive, that would have had, and this ordinance would have had no effect on any of that, but it might have made beekeepers less likely to be willing to go up in a bucket truck and get the bees out of the steeple of the daycare center.
Wes, I was going to ask you, I'm not really a one camp or the other. I'm pretty, I don't really care. I mean, I do care, but
Understand.
you know what I mean. I had a friend of mine asked me just this week if she could raise chickens in her backyard. And of course she can't, because she doesn't live on an acre of land. So we do regulate urban farming when it comes to chickens and
Right.
goats and stuff like that. But bees are totally not regulated whatsoever.
Not in our
Do
ordinance
other
currently.
cities, is that the
Yeah.
way they do it?
I mean, I brought my research with me tonight just to kind of give you an idea. When we did some research, we did not find any cities within the East Texas region that regulated it.
Okay.
But just to kind of run down real quick. Sorry, I should have had this ready. Allen, Block Springs, Duncanville, Frisco, Princeton, they all regulate the different beekeeping activities. And then there's another one. Irving, McKinney, Mesquite, Plano, and Rowlett also regulate beekeeping activities.
But those are suburbs of Dallas.
Of course. And you're exactly right. I've specifically looked at cities in the East Texas region that we typically compare ourselves to, and I did not find any that regulate bees.
Thank you, and thank you for doing the research. Wes, I didn't mean to attack you about it.
No, you're fine.
I'm just really upset
So Wes, in your opinion,
Gardener.
there's obvious answers to this, but, so you can't have chickens, but you can have bees?
Well,
Totally-
according to the current ordinance.
You can have 100 hives if you wanted to.
Yeah, the way this is written out is that you can't have more than 3 hives on less than an acre.
I meant, right, currently.
Oh, right now, you can, yeah, there is no regulation.
Okay.
But for poultry, and I forget, I know you asked me that question earlier this week, I think the answer was you can only have it if it's greater than an acre. You can have so many chickens greater than an acre.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we have regulations for poultry, livestock, and other animals. We do not currently have anything for bees.
Okay. Have we thought about ever looking at urban farming as maybe taking a step back and looking at it? Because it's kind of a new thing. People like to have gardens and chickens and bees, and taking a big picture look at revalue. Because it is kind of odd to have, you can't have chickens whatsoever, but you could have 100 hives of bees if you wanted to. So it sounds like you could, right? Currently you can.
Yeah, there are.
I mean, technically you could.
In other communities, that especially more urbanized communities, there's a lot of discussion right now because of just what you mentioned. A lot of people want their own farm-raised eggs or whatnot. There's a lot of discussion about ordinances and how you regulate that to make sure that you're not imposing on your neighbors and something to that nature. I could do some research on that if you'd like. It's just, again, they're more urbanized areas. It's not things you're going to see primarily in
Yeah.
in
But
our
of course,
area.
with chickens, if my neighbor's got a bunch of chickens, they start to stink, and I'm not very happy.
Yeah, there's going to be issues. So you're going to there's a reason why you
Yeah.
have protections in there.
I totally get it. I was just curious your opinion on all this urban farming and bees. And,
It's a trend that you're starting to see, it is, but again, those regulations are more in your urban areas, like
Okay.
it's pointed out here
Okay,
in the
cool.
research.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Let's see, resolution. We need a motion.
We have a motion to table this and a second. Or
Okay.
actually, no, I retract that statement. We have a motion to kill it from Commissioner Beal and a second from myself.
Okay. Let's get this. We have a motion to kill the ordinance by Commissioner Beal and second by Commissioner Holliday. Commissioner, what is your vote?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Nay.
And 1 nay. Ordinance is killed.